I'm working on international migrations, and especially I'm interested in especially interested in the North Korean community in Japan. Because if I talk about the North Korean, it maybe sounds a little bit weird. In one of the most advanced industrialized society, and there is some North Koreans living there. And I'm strictly saying they are not North Korean coming from North Korea. They are pre-war time immigrants from South Korea. I mean, geographically South Korea, and they came to Japan and they became immigrants in that society. And okay. So for this lecture, I'd like to introduce who they are and their historical background and what is their current situation of their culturalization or their integration toward the Japanese society. And before I start, I'd like to talk about why we have to be interested in these groups, because in this group it's actually, well, people may not feel that much interest in those groups because they are ethnic minority in Japan. But the ethnic minority is very interesting and important tool to understand the whole society itself, which means to understand Japanese society and Japanese idea of ethnicity and their ethnic boundary and their nationalism. It is the best way to do it is to study the ethnic minority in their society. And in context of East Asia, also, Japanese society and ethnic relations in those societies is very unique in East Asia because Japan was the only country who actually colonized their neighboring countries. So usually when we think about the international migrations and ethnic relations, it is usually the Western society and their relationship with the other society. It is a major interest of international migration. But in case of Asia, other countries seldom concentrate on that kind of colonization and ethnic relations within the Asian context. So actually the ethnic relationship between Japan and Koreans living in Japan is very unique and very important cases for understanding the ethnic relations in East Asian context. Okay. Before I jump into these groups, for the Taiwanese students who are a little bit far from Japan and Korea, well, in terms of geographically and sentimentally, I try to make it a little bit close to you. So last month, I visited National Taiwan University, and at the time, with my Tokyo University colleagues. And at the time, we had some campus tour, and we saw several spots. They have some explanation about their founders of those buildings. And those founders were Japanese professors or Japanese bureaucrats who built the National Taiwan University during the wartime. I mean, when it was Imperial University. And when we saw that, one of my Japanese colleagues said that this is really the biggest difference between Seoul National University and National Taiwan University. Because if you look around in Seoul National University, you cannot have any hints of those Japanese founder of university. Because as you know, the Seoul National University is also one of the Imperial University, pre-war time, and National Taiwan University is one of that. But in South Korea, the Seoul National University totally do not emphasize or even ignore or neglect that kind of historical background as a Imperial University. And we just totally cut that relationship between pre-war imperial university and just a normal national university. In case of National Time University, they are talking about that imperial time quite a lot, and they don't have that much reluctance about saying that. And we think why that kind of big differences happen. And one of the Japanese professor, Ogma H, actually gave very good explanation for that differences. Not what exactly that difference, but the difference between Koreans' feeling about the colonial policies and other East Asian countries or South Asian countries. Southeast Asian countries. Okay, and his explanation is the Japanese imperialism have totally different idea from the beginning toward Taiwan and toward South Korea Peninsula. Because when they first came to Taiwan or other Southeast Asia, they feel they are very different from Japanese in terms of culture and ethnicity and those stuff. So they don't have that much interest in assimilating the Taiwanese or Southeast Asian people. In case of South Korea, they are very much the same with Japanese in terms of culture and ethnicity. And they think there must be some historical lineage, which can be, geologically maybe true, but if they have very strong relationship in terms of lineage. So they think, that they can make Korea to be totally same with Japan. So they have very strong assimilation policy during the colonial time, but toward the Taiwan or other Southeast Asia, they didn't. But their idea was a bit wrong in terms of strong reluctance from Korean people, because Korean people would really hate that assimilation policies. And that policy, the background of policy actually has been maintained in dealing with Koreans living in Japan as well. That's why all those ideas related to assimilation and nationalism, ethnicity is still can be found in Koreans' the Japanese treatment of Koreans living in Japan. So who are the Koreans living in Japan? As I said, during the colonial period, lots of Koreans as a colonial subjects, they migrated to Japan, partly as economic laborers, and partly forced migration, and they are firstly brought to Japan during the wartime. But most of them, all of them actually have the Japanese nationals. They have Japanese citizenship at the time. But after the war, they lost the Japanese citizenship. And but around 1/5 of the whole immigrants, like among the 2.4 million Koreans, among them, the 1/5 left in Japan, and they became so-called Koreans living in Japan these days, and they and their descendants. So, because it's a pre-war immigrants, these days, second, third, fourth generations are living there. But lots of people still maintain their Korean nationality rather than choosing to be naturalized Japanese citizens. So for those people with the Korean nationality, but have that historical background, got the special permanent resident status in terms of the special visa for them. So it's like green card. But they are given only to those former colonial people. And these people are called old-comer. And then you can guess there is a newcomer as well. So the term we maybe need to figure out, a newcomer is, old-comer is apparently coming before a pre-war time, and the newcomers is after the San Francisco Treaty. The people who came after that is called the newcomer. It is actually coined by Japanese people. Newcomer is they made that word as to to distinguish those groups. And for me, and most of the scholars who are interested in Koreans living in Japan is usually talking about the old-comer Koreans, pre-wartime immigrants, because the newcomers have totally different life cycle and lifestyle, and they are still very low generational changes. So from now on, I will talk about Koreans living in Japan, which is called Jainichi, is calling to the old-comer people. And coming back to the terminology and categorization again, usually in Japan, we call the Koreans living in Japan as a Jainichi. Jainichi is, well, literally it is meaning just living in Japan. So Jainichi Gaikokujin is a Jainichi, foreigners living in Japan. But usually, because the Korean immigrants was the majority of the immigrants in Japan, the Jainichi is just identically referred to the Koreans at the time. But these days, of course, the population is changing. But still, the term Jainichi is meaning those people, the Koreans living in Japan. But as you can see, the Chinese Kankokujin is a Chinese South Korean, strictly saying. And Jainichi Chosenjin is a bit tricky because Chosen is before the colonization. So, the Chosenjin can be really everybody, including North Korean, South Korean. But these days, because Kita Joseon, which means the North Korea, sometimes the Jainichi Chosenjin can be just referred to North Koreans who support North Korea. And Jainichi Korean, as you can see, the name Korean is a weird complex of Japanese and English, which means because they want to escape from the controversy between, is it Korean, South Korean, North Korean, and so on. And so most popular terminology which is used these days is Jainichi Kankoku Chosenji, because it can cover everybody. And but from this terminology, we can see there are many various issues related to international migration. That is nationality, ethnicity, citizenship, and identity, and so on. For example, who can be included into that categorization which I showed earlier? So these several issues should be considered. Firstly, political alignment. As I said, are they North Korea supporter or South Korea supporter? Or secondly, nationality. Do they have South Korean nationality, or actually Japan does not admit North Korean nationality, so it's Chosenseki, which is very weird category. It's not North Korean, but it's not South Korean. It refers to pre-colonization times nationality, but practically, if someone has a Chosenseki, it's regarded as North Korean supporter these days. And Japanese citizenship, that is gained through naturalization or interracial marriage or their children. And the second thing is ethnicity. Ethnicity, through the intermarriage, there can be a new group, interracial children coming out. And before they are called half, but they regard that sounds negative. So they coin a new word, dabu. Dabu is a double. So they say we are not half of each community, but we have both group, and they have more advantage in terms of cultural diversity. So they use a dabu these days. And the other issue is the cohort of migration, because this cohort, old-comer and newcomer, as I said, and different thing is that all these things can mean different things for over generations. So sometimes especially nationality, for the older generation, nationality is something really shaking a aspect of their ethnic identity. But these days, the younger generation can easily change their nationality compared to older generations. So so many issues are actually intertwined in considering the Koreans living in Japan. And I want to briefly talk about the history of building ethnic community in Japan. So since 1945, the Korea was liberated from Japanese colonization, and but these communities experienced a huge division within the community. But firstly, during the wartime, many Korean communists were arrested under the wartime restrictions. But after the war, they were liberated. They came from their prison, and the picture is the Koreans at the time. They are celebrating their colleagues coming from the jail, and because this large number of Korean communists coming from the jail, they became the leader of the ethnic community. And so the leadership of the communists and nationalists who sympathized with communism, they became the leader of the community, and they established the League of Koreans, which is called Choreon in Korean. They became they also allied with the Japanese communists as well. And but at the time when these groups is organized, at the same time, a rivalry organization which is called Mindan apparently supports more nationalism or liberalism. So maybe in the context of these days, supports South Korea. But that Mindan is also at the same time came out. And so these two groups eventually identify themselves as the allegiance to their northern and southern regime of Korean Peninsula. And so by 1945, the Communist children held sway over about 2/3 of the total Korean population in Japan, which means Korean population is really support the communist part rather than other nationalists or other liberalists and so on. So this one is the 1946's central office building of that organization, Choreon. And it is located Tokyo Station's one of the main gates in the very huge building just in the center of Tokyo, which means this shows how powerful the organization at the time and how much they could make also funding for their ethnic movement. But the League was, very publicly they identified itself with the area of North Korea and North Korean communism and the Soviets, which was regarded as a very dangerous organization by the occupation forces at the time, by the American and European people. So they abandoned this organization and vanished. So this organization is totally dissolved. And these pictures show the police, Japanese police, just stood in front of the buildings. But in 1955, the second leftist group, actually was successor of the former Choreon, actually reorganized it, but they became more hardcore or go farther than the Choreon, and they named that as a Chongnyeon, which exists even now. These is really identify themselves as a overseas nationals organization of North Korea. But Mindan, which I talk about, supporting South, they exist without any abandoned. And so these two groups became the major organization over the Korean population, even now. But they really had the hegemony over the whole ethnic community. And so all the Korean populations tried to find their own way, whether they have to support North Korean Chongnyeon community, whether they have to be part of the Chongnyeon community or Mindan community or in the middle or naturalization. They have to choose their way to find their to survive in Japanese society. But some people, of course, they chose assimilation into mainstream Japanese society, and they just coming from Chinese organization. That trend actually getting more stronger and stronger, especially since 1990s. Okay, then I'll go back to the characteristic of Chongnyeon community. They are very unique and have some special meaning in Japanese society because, as I said, Chongnyeon is fundamentally support North Korean regime, and one of the biggest characteristic of this community is they have very high degree of institutional completeness. You may not be familiar with the concept of institutional completeness. It is suggested by Raymond Gritton. This idea is well, even though you can see the definition like the minority community's level of institutional development and organization exercise this influence on its ability to retain and attract members away from the host society. This may not be clear for you to understand this concept. Well, just simply saying that whether the ethnic community can meet all the social or life needs, demands of the ethnic members of the community. So whether they have to go out to meet their needs, go out means going to the whole society, larger society, or they can meet all their needs within the community. And in case of Chongnyeon, they have very high institutional completeness, which means they can live within their community without using host society's institution. For example, they have very strong ethnic schools, which start from kindergarten to university. They have their own university as well. So this picture is the entrance ceremony for the ethnic primary school. And
so even nowadays?
Yeah, of course.
And even nowadays, they are still treated as a stateless or special status?
Special status.
Not the Japanese citizenship.
No.
And 2.4 million.
Sorry?
2.4 million. 2.4 million.
Oh, no, 2.4 million. I said 1/5 left.
1/5 left.
Yeah.
And how many of them right now?
600,000.
600,000. It's a big number.
Yeah, look.
60
mark.
Yeah, 600,000.
Yeah, still up there. And so basically all over the nation, each municipal they have their own schools, huge groups, networks. But these days, actually, the number of the ethnic schools is really shrinking. Well, with many reasons, but I will talk about it later. And the other ethnic thing is they have an ethnic newspaper. And this newspaper is actually, in Korea, we cannot see this newspaper. It is prohibited by law because it is very weird and funny, but Korean government think if Korean people are exposed to these contents, they feel sympathize with the communists. So they just, in Japan or in other countries, we can see this newspaper through web, but in Korea it is, cut it yet, and you cannot access to this website. But anyway, they have their picture, and through this newspaper, actually Korean people or other scholars overseas can tell what the North Korean regime is thinking, because they show North Koreans' stance very clearly. And this is ethnic elderly daycare center. This is very recent one, and I'm working on these groups because they are very new and very special new type of ethnic movement. So I will talk about, if time allows, I will talk about this as well. And so that is how high the institutional compliance they have. The second characteristic of Chongyan community is their official self-identification as North Korean's overseas organization, as I said. With this identification, they also have non-interference principle toward Japanese politics or policies, which means they said, we don't care about Japanese way or Japanese politics, Japanese policies. We will live by ourselves, and okay, we don't care about you. So one of my interviewees, I interviewed one Korean Chongyan affiliated younger generation. And one of them say, actually, from the primary school time, he always talked by his parents say, do not have any interest in Japanese politics, because we are foreigners. You don't have to care about the Japanese politics, even though he's born in Japan, and well, he's also fourth generation already. But they keep saying that, okay, you're North Koreans, you don't have to care about the Japanese politics. So that is very weird for other different ethnic groups, but they maintain that kind of stance. And the third one is they have strong economic self-reliances. This was actually very Japanese government feels thankful about this, because they can have very minimum welfare expenditure toward the Koreans, Chongyan Koreans in Japan, because they don't want anything from Japanese states that much. And the final characteristic is, because of all these kind of relationship with North Korea and Japan, their social position is really strongly influenced by the relationship between Japan and North Korea. So the international relations becomes direct influence or life influences for them. And I'll come to this later. But since 1990s, what happened to Chongyan community? I mean, they could maintain and they could do relatively well until 1980s with all of this, because the North Korean economy was not that bad by the time, and as the ethnic schools had been supported by North Korean regime. So they sent lots of money to support the ethnic schools. And everything was okay. And the Koreans living in Japan, Chongyan people make lots of money through business and so on. But since 1990s, many problems coming out. Firstly, basically we can say it's a reduced hegemony over the Korean populations. Firstly, after the bubble economy of Japan, that influences, apparently, matter of course, they are a member of Japanese society. That's why they also have very strong economic hardships, which, so they have their own bank, everything. As I said, it's a high institutional compliance, but many banks or companies are bankrupt after the bubble economy. So they have very strong economic hardship to support their ethnic groups. And also large demographic changes, a generational shift, and aging is going on. And But still, the Chongmyeon organization are not interested in social welfare that much. They still focusing on the political rivalry with South Korea, which is quite disappointing many members of the organization community. And the biggest influence was the shock of abduction of Japanese citizens. As you know, the Koizumi, Prime Minister Koizumi, when he visited North Korea, the Kim Jong-il admitted the abduction of Japanese citizens. That was huge because only the rumors going on. There is some abduction of Japanese citizens by North Korea, but actually the leader of the country admitted the fact that really make a huge attack the North Koreans living in Japan, because strong social antagonism toward all the North Koreans living in Japan. So they were attacked by the ethnic school kids are attacked by Japanese, and all the ethnic related stuff is always attacked by the Japanese citizens and so on. So before, the ethnic schools had this kind of scene, like Kim Il-sung, Kim Jong-il was in front of the classroom, and they follow the North Korean curriculum. So, but after that abduction issues, they get rid of those stuff, because many members of the community start to bring their children from that school, because they worried about their kids can be attacked, or in terms of also they are also Koreans themselves are disappointed with the North Korean regime, because they didn't believe actually the abduction really happened. But because the great leader admitted the fact, suddenly they realized, okay, it really happened, and we don't support that kind of regime anymore. So many people bring their children coming out from that, and also, even though they still support North Korea, they think remaining in ethnic school may not good for their children in the future in terms of economic, getting a job or any social status. They don't think it is good. So that's why the school is shrinking. So the school thought, okay, if we get rid of all those North Korean stuff, maybe that will attract the parents again. So that's why they did lots of work. So they do not use the North Korean curriculum anymore, but still they're using some, and get rid of those pictures and so on. And before, they wear that kind of Korean traditional clothes as a school uniform. But after the abduction issue, when they come out with the school uniform, they were attacked by Japanese people. That's why they changed their uniform as just a normal Japanese style, Western style school uniform. And before, because of lots of civil rights movement or many leftist intelligence actually supported North Korea and Chongmyeon community a lot, because still by the time the Japanese intellectuals are more left, and they think, okay, South Korea has been under the military dictatorship, but as a leftist, the North Korea looks better society. So many Japanese leftists supported Chongmyeon community rather than Mindan. But so many Chongmyeon community could get government support, because some politicians also, leftist politicians also help, so that they could get lots of subsidy, national subsidy, or all the support. But after the abduction issue, suddenly, the leftist politicians and intellectuals cannot say anything anymore, because they are regarded as a safe group. So that is directly related to why Japanese politics became so right these days. Actually, that is one of the biggest momentum for Japanese politics to be very right side, going right side rather, because all the leftist politicians is totally gone after that abduction issue. So so after that, well, very openly, Japanese government oppressed the ethnic schools or ethnic organizations. So you can see that in many ways, especially in financial way, they discriminate ethnic schools. So, and he is very famous. He is actually untouched. His background is Burakumin. Burakumin is Japanese version of untouchable people. But he became the Osaka, the municipals, the leader of the Osaka municipal. And even though he has that kind of a bit discriminated background, he is very conservative and very right side. So he also, well, very strongly criticized the Chongnyeon group, and they cut all the, if you can say, Chosengaku has it, so for all the subsidy or support, government support, they just excluded ethnic Korean school and so on. So they're kind of more official Japanese oppression and discrimination could be admitted by society itself. Before it was regarded as a injustice, but after the abduction issue, it can be the society as a whole supported this idea. So, but if we come back to the community, I like to say the member of the Koreans living in Japan, including Chongnyeon, they all have different way of life. Here I like to introduce you some psychological, what's that? Intercultural psychology theory, which is suggested by John Barry. His idea is basically start with the thinking that everybody have their own choice, and everybody have different thinking and idea about how to live after they are exposed to different cultures. For example, the immigrants who are exposed to different cultures and have to live there. And so he think the acculturation is usually this term is loved by anthropologists, but it seems that every scholar is using this term in a different way. But here I like to say the acculturation usually, in terms of international migration theories, usually the assimilation is the most important concept, especially those theories were developed in American context, and American society are interested in the assimilation, how much those all different ethnic groups can be assimilated into major American society. But some other scholars think, okay, the assimilation is not always the end stage of all the ethnic minority groups. Actually, many reactive way of acculturation is going on. So the acculturation, which means the people who are exposed to different, when they meet different culture, how they are going to be changed or unchanged, can have various ways. And assimilation is just one of different choices. So I'll say the concept of acculturation strategies, this theory can say, two issues is most important thing. One issue is maintenance of heritage, culture, and identity, which means whether people want to maintain their own culture and their identity, how much they want to do that. And the another issue, the another red one, okay, the former one is this, and this, the other issue is this. how much they want to have a relationship with the people living in host society, how they want to be part of the larger society. So with these two issues, they can have different plus minus stuff. So if you see this part, it's the strategy of minority groups, the small non-dominant ethno-cultural groups thinking. And if you want to maintain your own culture, but at the same time they want to be a part of the larger society, then they take integration strategy. But they want to be part of the major society, but they are not interested in maintaining their own culture. Then it will be assimilation. And this is actually very interesting because it is what Chongryun takes, which means they want to maintain their ethnic heritage very much, but they are not interested in to be part of the Japanese society. And neither of these two are the target of the interest, and it's a marginalization. It's very, very rare. And through the when you use a large data, like large survey of the ethnic minorities all over the world, usually the integration strategy is most popular because most of the people, and they have very good psychological well-being when they take the strategy. Because, you know, we can guess because they will maintain their own culture, but at the same time, they're part of the society. So, yeah, it's good. But the third dimension, there is third dimension, and this is very important because it is the powerful role played by the dominant group, which means, okay, this is the, well, they can choose, but they cannot choose freely. Even though they want to maintain their own culture and to be part of the society, but if the whole society does not allow it, you cannot do it. For example, if Japanese society does not allow Koreans to be part of the society, if they keep their own culture, then they cannot choose this option. So this is not totally free choice. So the third, the powerful role played by the dominant group is actually a very important issue. And at the same time, this was the non-dominant group's strategy, but this part is a dominant group strategy. In this case, the Japanese people. They can take also similar way. They can have their own strategy. For example, if they allow their ethnic minor group maintain their own culture, but at the same time they accept them as a member of the society, then it will be so-called multiculturalism. You are familiar with this. Well, Canada and Australia make the multiculturalism as their official policy. And well, something similar to assimilation is a melting pot. Is very famous in terms of American way before, and the segregation is like it sounds like discrimination, but segregation is they're gonna allow a member of society, even though you can keep your culture, but you cannot be accepted by us. And exclusion is, okay, do not do anything. So, yeah. Well, usually the marginalization and exclusion is a bit rare case. So, so I will see the Korean community. How many times?
Should be end at 6 o'clock.
Oh. So I will see the Korean community again in terms of this concept, how the Koreans living in Japan take their own acculturation strategy, which of that, and
The third means segregation, right? The third
separation is, as I said, separation is what Chongryun has maintained so far. But there are other groups as well, and even within the Chongryun, there can be diversified people. And so I will see that Chinese activism, how they show their different acculturation strategies. So before the the politics of homelands was the dominant idea, and it will be changed to the civil rights of residents in Japan. Okay, we'll start off from the 90s until the early 1970s. Still within the community, the myth of return was very strong, which means until that time, still the first generation migrants living in Japan. And they think, okay, anyway, it will be temporarily. Living in Japan is temporarily. They will go back to Korea sometime. So because they have this kind of myth of return, that's why they were really strongly support the ethnic school as well, because anyway, our children will go back to Korea, so we have to educate them in Korean way. And this myth of return resulted in a strong Korean identity, and again, indifference to the right of permanent residents in Japan, because they will go back anyway. We are not interested in gaining any civil right inside of Japan. And this idea was actually reinforced by Japanese state, because Japanese state people, okay, you were, pre-war time, you were a member of our society, but because after the war, please go back to your country. It is basically Japanese stance. So, if I, coming back this, so it really happened since 1959 December, so well, practically from 1960, huge number of Koreans going back to North Korea.
How many?
In 1960, on that year only, around 50,000 going back, and this movement actually ended by mid-80s. Yeah, over 20 years it was maintained, and by that time around about 100,000. They're back to Korea and North Korea, and this is one of the reasons why still North Korea and Chongnam community have very strong relationship with North Korea, because one of their family members actually went back during that time, especially in case of the first son, because the first son is the most important of their lineage. They sent their first son to North Korea. Many families. And when I did the interview, they said in ethnic school, the most brilliant kids actually went back. They have their own class for the returning back class, and most of the elite kids actually entered that class, and many of them went back. And still, because Japanese government tried to cut the financial relationship between Koreans living in Japan and North Korea, because many money is going back to North Korea and they make a nuclear weapon with that money. But one of the reasons why so many money is going back to North Korea is they have their own family over there. So they keep sending money for them as well. And at that time they regard, okay, we are discriminated in Japanese society, but in North Korea, it is a socialist heaven. If we are going back there, we will be educated, and everything is free, and we are not ethnically discriminated and so on. So actually, it was a mood of festival. They went back with so many cheers and so on. But it turns out actually it was really fake. Movement organized by both North Korea and Japanese government and Red Cross organization. Three of them actually, Japanese want them to going back, and North Korea want their money. And Red Cross is a kind of some abuse there, but at the same time, actively they join this for their own political reason to get some Japanese support. So it turns out very strong tragedy these days because after they are back, they realized they were actually, it was a lie, everything was a lie. And still they are having they're suffering a lot. And when I did an interview with the elderly people who sent their children to North Korea, they really regret all those decisions for that. But anyway, this shows how much they wanted to go back. And one of the more big tragedy is most of them, as I said, most of Koreans living in Japan coming from South Korea because South Korea is geographically close to Japan. So their hometown is South Korea, but they going back to North Korea because ideologically they support socialism, and at the same time, South Korean regime totally ignored the Koreans living in Japan. They are not interested in that at all. But as I said, the North Korean regime keeps sending money for their education and everything. So they think, okay, South Korea abandoned us, but North Korea is our true homeland. That's why even though they are coming from South Korea, they went back to North Korea. So until the time, they have very strong myth of return. But since 1970s, the what is called third wave coming out, because until 1950s, just around half of the Koreans were the Japan-born. But 1974, 75.6% are actually Japan-born, and they realized that okay, we are not going back anyway, and they think it is very unrealistic. And they think about, okay, then if we have to live in Japan from now on, what shall we do? So they think, okay, we are not totally Korean and we are not Japanese, and they are not accepted as a Japanese. So they find the third way. They make the term third way. Okay, we are not totally returning back Korean, but the Korean people. But at the same time, but we are not accepted as Japanese people, so we have to work for our civil rights. So they start to find their civil rights movement. One of the biggest momentum for this movement is Hitachi employment discrimination case. It is one Korean person experienced employment discrimination when, well, he was forcibly accepted, but after the Japanese employer found that he was Korean, ethnic background was Korean, it was cancelled. That's why that became a huge issue, and all over the world, all of the nation, the Korean people also organized and make a movement against that. And it was very successful, and after that there was some special law or all those anti-discrimination laws made, and anyway, so that kind of item is made. And since 1980s, this civil rights movement became much more stronger. And one of the movement is fingerprinting and registration of alien residents in Japan. By the time, all the foreigners who are living in Japan have to make their fingerprint registered. So usually, the fingerprint registration is done only for the criminals, and only the foreigners. But even though it is called foreigners at the time, most of the foreigners were Koreans. They think is again the discrimination against the Koreans. But this movement actually changed the foreigners registration law itself. And at the time, Korean people also allied with different ethnic backgrounds, foreigners together. So they show the new way of ethnic movement. And since the 1990s, the civil rights movement is changing and focusing on the Sanseiken-undong, which means the political representation. Because, as I said, the Koreans have Korean nationality without Japanese citizenship, then they don't have any voting rights. But because they have permanent residency, and they think they're paying all the taxes, and well, practically they will leave from now on over generations. So they want voting rights. So suffrage movement is going on, and still it is not accepted by the state level. But some municipals allow the foreigners to vote with their foreign nationality. So but this idea of third wave or civil rights movement is not something accepted by whole population of Koreans living in Japan, Korean community. As I said, Chongnyeon and Mindan do not agree with this idea because they think if they want to be part of Japanese society, it will directly lead to assimilation to Japanese society. Then they will lose all the ethnic identity, ethnicity, and so on. So it is called the dilemma of differences and equality. And well, some Japanese or some Koreans or some younger generation may think it is just old generation's conservative idea, or Chongnyeon's idea of separation, supporting North Korea. But actually, in terms of the former, if we think about this, it is not totally just a irrational or conservatism or and so on. Actually, if Japanese society do not accept them totally as a member of the society, if they don't allow the integration, then if the Koreans just want to be integrated, but if Japanese society does not allow it, then it will be assimilation anyway. So their idea can be some that makes sense in some way because they can have that kind of worries. So the important issue is whether Japanese society is ready for multiculturalism as Korean people expected. So, and another issue is nationality. As I said, they want their suffrage or the civil rights with maintaining their nationality, Korean nationality. But it will be more casual talk. Why don't they change their nationality? They have the root of naturalization. They can get Japanese citizenship, and everything will be fine, and their life will be easier. But it is some of the Korean people who chose naturalization. They have that idea. That's why they chose. But because if we do not think, we should not identify the Japanese citizenship and Korean nationality's relationship with the American citizenship or Korean's nationality. Actually, many Koreans living in LA or in America, they very easily get their American citizenship naturally, and actually they eagerly want to get American citizenship. But only in case of Japan, they don't want to change their nationality. They want to keep their nationality. They don't want to. Until 1970s, 80s, Japanese naturalization law was very strict. So if you want to get Japanese citizenship, it is not easy task because firstly, sometimes they visit your house and they check whether they are living in a Japanese way, and at the same time you have to change your name in a Japanese way, and if you want to maintain your Korean name, it's not allowed to be naturalized and so on. So they kind of really official difficulties in changing their nationality existed. But after 1980s, actually, rather than those government sanctioning, Koreans people do not want to change their nationality because they regard their nationality to be identical with ethnicity or ethnic identity. It is more East Asian concept that is also possessed by Japanese people as well. So Japanese people also regard nationality as a Japanese ethnicity. So that's why Japanese society cannot accept those people even though they are not regarded as Japanese ethnic way, but they get Japanese citizenship and they are Japanese, and that kind of category does not exist in their mind. So someone like Taiwanese American, Korean American, they don't have that kind of idea of Korean Japanese. It is based on people's idea of categorization of the concept, citizenship, because citizenship is a very Western concept. For us, the citizenship is a bit not that easily accepted as a concept. So citizenship, nationality, ethnicity is a kind of, in Japanese or Koreans' mind, is a kind of a bit, in some part overlapped, in some part is not, something like that. So even though the nationality is, we can call it citizenship, Korean people think if they change their nationality into Japanese one, it means, for them, it means they giving up their ethnic identity and ethnicity, totally change their old background into Japanese. And when I did some interview with the Koreans who were naturalized and to get a Japanese citizenship, he was a bit aged, now around 70, but when he firstly changed his nationality to Japanese one, his neighboring Japanese grandmother came to see him and said that, okay, finally you became a Nippana, is that in English, very good Japanese. So they think, okay, to live in Japan as a Korean is regarded as a secondary person rather than pure Japanese. So the nationality issue is always very hot potato for the Koreans. And their very pros, cons always exist. And still, over that, various opinions are going on. Some people said, okay, we have to get the Japanese citizenship to get a better civil rights. And some people, okay, we want civil rights, but we have to maintain our nationality. So that controversy is still going on. And this nationality or national identity issue was so overwhelming in this community. Different minority groups are relatively overlooked. For example, the disabled, women, aged people, or children's welfare, all those a bit disadvantaged group or minority within minority community has been neglected because the ethnic issues or ethnic identity issue was so important and so huge for this community to survive in Japan. The minority within the minority are overlooked and they cannot show their voice because whenever they want to talk about their own rights, people said, okay, it is secondary. Firstly, we have to admit it as a Korean, as a social member. Then every other group's right should be regarded. So, but these days, new voices over okay, we should not ignore the minority within minority. So new groups like women's right or disabled groups right, all those new voices coming out. But still small, but it's coming out these days. We have, okay, I want to go more further further, okay, 10 minutes more. So far I saw that the Chongyun group has maintained their ethnic separation strategy all the way. But as I said, they could not deal with the new demands of the members of the community. Like the new generations want more social welfare support, and they are not interested in political rivalry with South Korea, and they are not much interested in our great leader or those communists and so on. They want to, well, make living in Japan. So they want really helpful organization, ethnic organization for them. But still, the Chongyun is thinking about the political issues all the time. And so, but at the same as Japanese society is experiencing huge aging problem, and firstly, so I found a new type of ethnic movement is going on inside the Chongyun community. Before, as I said, they are not interested in make usage of Japanese institution, Japanese system, and so on. But I found new groups start to use Japanese system, and the system is named long-term care insurance. It is supporting for the elderly people by Japanese government, and so they make some Korean elderly daycare centers, and all the staff members are Koreans, and all the users are also elderly Koreans. And most of the staff are educated in ethnic schools, so they can speak Koreans and they know about the Korean culture. And they emphasize that the Korean elderly need special care because they have different ethnic background and historical background of discrimination. They cannot be relaxed in Japanese daycare center. So they said they need a new institutions for only Korean elderly. So they said the Japanese social welfare system considers only the Japanese and ignores the historical and cultural context of the Koreans in Japan. So they emphasize our mode of care, which means Korean style 1. 우리시키 kaigo. Actually, 우리시키 means it's our style. It is quite easily found in all the Chongyun or North Korean propaganda. They always say, even socialism, they say our mode of socialism, our mode of everything. So because they want to be, originally it was created to be distinguished from Soviet socialism. So they want their own style, Soviet or Chinese one, they want to have their own style of socialism, but it became their own way of propaganda. But anyway, because they are so familiar with those concepts, they used our mode of care. But this really appealed to Japanese, intellectuals and Japanese government. Anyway, because Japanese, it does not make any bad thing for Japanese government, because Japanese government eagerly want social welfare services by the private sectors. And the ethnic groups make their own private sector for the elderly care. It is good for them. And and at the same time, their status is non-profit organization. Before, the Japanese had relatively very weak civil society. They have very strong government control over the civil society. But in 1990s, you may remember the Kobe earthquake happened. Since then, Japanese society observes many civil groups civil society actually was much more effective than Japanese government in rescuing all the people and dealing with earthquake disasters. That's why the society said, okay, we have to make our own law to support civil society. And in 1990s, so the new NPO law, non-profit organization law, was legislated. So since before you have to get the license from the government, but since that law, you can just register for the non-profit organization status. And that these groups could make use of that new law. So they also get status of non-profit organization. So they have non-profit organization at the same time long-term care insurance service provider status. They have those two status. And what actually mobilized those groups to make this kind of a new group? Because they regard the Chongnyeon system is not reliable at all. Even though they want something for Chongnyeon, Chongnyeon keeps saying, okay, we will do it, but we don't have money and we don't have time. I'm not interested in this stuff. So they think if keep this kind of thing, also the financial problem really exists because they don't have really money to do this kind of thing. So these people regard if just let everything done by the Chongnyeon group, all the rank and file normal people will disappoint ethnic organization itself, and they will leave the whole ethnic community. So they feel very threatened about the existence of community itself. So they think, okay, we have some of the more some of the ethnic leaders. They make their own new way of ethnic movement, and they think, okay, we don't have money apparently, but we are facing very strong social antagonism toward themselves after that abduction issues of Japanese citizens. They think, okay, with the Chongnyeon image and Chongnyeon finances, we cannot do anything. And actually, Chongnyeon people cannot do it as well because they are not interested in these welfare issues. So they start to think about use the Japanese system itself. So they think, okay, long-term care insurance was newly built and the non-profit organization law is newly made. So we will use both these two new social systems for us. So from the long-term care insurance, as they became a provider, they can get very sustained financial resources through the insurance system. And at the same time, through the NPO law system, they could get social legitimacy, which means they can reduce their social antagonism also because they have NPO, because they can be called non-profit organization. They can be distinguished themselves from Chongnyeon, and they became one of the member of whole Japanese civil society. So they are accepted as a member of civil society with the non-profit organization position. And so actually, even though it is their own idea and mobilization, but as we said, in the theory of mobilization, civil rights movement, we have the theory of resource mobilization theory, which means, of course, the people's anger or psychological feeling can affect when people make a social movement. At the same time, resources, money, time, or the motivations is actually much more important in mobilizing people to be part of social movement. But in case of this group, they have their own feeling about against the Japanese discrimination, against Japanese assimilation. We are part of a discriminated group, and they have very strong nationalism. But what really helped them to be mobilized and to make a new social movement is actually they have resources. and that resources is not is not provided by Japanese government intentionally. So in sociological terms, we call it as unintended consequences. Even though it is not intended consequence, it is not intended by Japanese society, but it unintendedly, it resulted in these kind of outcomes. So Japanese society have the aging, so the top of the figure, these two is what Japanese society has faced. So they experiencing aging society, and they had Kobe earthquake and discovery of volunteerism of Japan. So when they have the aging society, Japanese state try to find the way to solve this problem. So they think, okay, we will expand the welfare. We will put more money into aging support. So they really put, Japan is a rich country. They put lots of money for aging welfare, but it was too expensive. Actually, huge money is used for only elderly people. They made a gold plan, and because gold plan is not enough, they make a new gold plan. And for these plans, huge public expenditure was made on elderly people. And they regarded it as too expensive. So they make some idea, okay, we will go into the privatization of social welfare. So not everything will be done by that state money. Okay, the people, you have to pay your money as well. So they accepted a social insurance system, which means as you do health insurance, you have to pay long-term care insurance fee as a taxation. So the burden on normal Japanese people is getting bigger, but the burden on states is getting shorter. So that's why they call it a privatization of social welfare, which means normal people have to pay the money. So with this, this is the long-term care insurance. So they divided the service providers. So before, only the institutions, daycare center, which is produced by the government and managed by the government, existed. But after the long-term care insurances, just the normal groups can make their daycare centers quite easily as a service job. So they made the wide service providers, and that's why the governments have to say something to persuade people why this system is important, why it's good for you. And they say, okay, you will have larger consumers' choice. Before you have to use only government-style daycare center, but now you can have so different. Okay, you can choose something very, only good-looking people gathering daycare center, or some places is very fun program daycare center, and so on. So governments say that you can have better consumer choices. And so that is long-term care insurance system. And one of the consumer choice can be ethnic one this time, because the Korean people make that. So with this idea, the Korean people can make their own daycare center. And so from that, they can get resource of finance, money. They come from this. And the other one is as sad, the Kobe earthquake, discovery of volunteerism. It is what happened in Japan. And Japanese states, again, think about, okay, people want new volunteerism, new robust civil society. What do we have to do? At the time, this is a social demand. So states made their decision. They will make less state intervention for civil society and give them free. So socialism, and through the new MPO law, they will give social legitimacy to civil society as a whole. That is government's idea. And with this, MPO law was made. And again, the Korean people use this law. So the MPO long-term care insurance service providers, MPO and long-term care insurance service providers run by Koreans' younger generations targeting Chinese elderly users could be made. That means this money, finance, and social legitimacy became the became the resources for their ethnic movement. So, again, we can say why this kind of change happened. So think about the former one, this one. Okay. The ethnic group want maintaining their own heritage, cultural identity, and also they want to be part of the society. And the third dimension, the powerful role played by the government, by the state exists. So three different dimensions exist. And we can see how these three dimensions work for Koreans this time. So firstly, the rank and file want more contact and participation toward Japanese society. But the ethnic elites, they just want to maintain cultural maintenance only. But when these two is going on, the third dimension, the Japanese state policy is changing. Before, this is the power to decide on acculturation process, as I mentioned. The Japanese state policy before, they did not allow, but as I said, it's an unintended one. They just are changing to deal with their own society's problem. But through that, anyway, the Japanese state helped the ethnic group to be part of the society through the policies. So before, they could not be member of civil society, but now they can be through state policy, and they cannot join any welfare, and get the finance from the government. But now they can do through the policy of long-term care insurance. So the third dimension, which even though it is not intentionally state-made, but unintended state policy worked as a third dimension to allow the Korean people to be integrated toward the society. So because of this mechanism, the Korean people, the Cheongryun people who maintain their separation strategy could change their strategy from separation toward integration. But still, they are in stage of transition. They are not totally integration or something, but they are on the move of transitional stage of changing a cultural strategy from separation toward integration. And other thing, well, these days they are working on these groups also helping those. Well, it's related to you, so that's why I say that because these people who left, the kids who are left it after the war in China or Taiwan, all those places, they coming back to Japan, but they cannot know any Japanese culture even though they have Japanese background, and they also have aging problem, and they don't know what to do. At the time, these Korean the people who support elderly Koreans, they help these people, and they help them to make their own daycare center with Chinese or cultural aspect on the process of service provision. Okay, so I will talk about my work by this. I hope you can get some brief idea about what is ethnic issues and ethnic relations in ongoing issues in Japan. And maybe, as I know, Taiwan also experienced many ethnic issues. You have lots of ethnic minorities, and you have lots of foreign labor migrants and so on. So when you think about all those, your domestic issues as well, you can think about all these different issues, because from now on, because of the globalization, you will see much more foreigners in your own community, own society, and at the same time, you can be also ethnic minority in other society. If you go, actually, in terms of international migration studies, international student is counted as a migrants, temporary migrants. So you can be temporary migrants as well. So, well, when you think about all the globalization and people's move from one country to another country, I hope you can have different view from now on to see, okay, how people can live together within society, how different cultural groups can live together, because it will be a huge issue from now on, much more and more from now on. So, yeah, so I hope it can be helpful for you. Okay, any questions and comments?
Yes, please.
I have a question. The first is that how the community see the progress among the two Korea, South Korea and the North Korea. And the second question is that how the young generation of the community view the modern history of Korea and Japan, because there are severe conflict between the Japan government and the Korea. So I think it will influence the identity of the community. So I wonder how they treat this period of history.
Okay.
Good questions.
The first question is how the Korean people regard the rival situation of the North and South community. Okay, the first and the second one is how the younger generation regard the modern history of between Korea and Japan. Right? Okay, the first one is okay. Still, the normal people, what we call rank and file, normal people try to is a bit annoyed by this ongoing rivalry between North and South organizations. And are you talking about the Korean Peninsula's domestic politics or the inside Japan, the communities conflict inside Japan? Okay. So that's why they think the normal people want to be changed because over the generation, over the time, okay, the Korean community should be changed. But the problem is really the ethnic elites try not to be changed. And because they heard the new voices, they actually try on. They want to make a new kind of a cooperation and treaty. So the leader of two groups met once, and they signed on new treaty between those two groups. So from now on, we won't do any rivalry stuff and so on. And just right after 2 days later, it was canceled because huge reactions coming out from who still rejected about that idea. Reconcile is not good for them. So still, majority want something to change it, but still very hardcore, strong group exists. Still, the official reconcile is not going on. But general population want to be changed. And especially these days, Korean culture is quite popular in Japan, Kanyu. But the North Korea is very antagonism is going on against the North Korea. So they want to be reduce the North Korean influences on Japanese whole community. But still, but because of that kind of situation, the North Korean supporters became minority these days within the community. Usually that kind of threatening is going on. Actually, the core member of those groups became more hardcore. So the North Korean supporters is getting much more nationalistic these days, and they really strongly want to keep their community, even younger generations, because they were educated in ethnic schools. They still want some. They still regard the North Korea as their own home country. And our great leader is part of a good person. And so, yeah. But still, they became minority again and again. And historical issues, as I said, the whole population have a large spectrum. Actually, some younger generations are not interested in ethnic issue at all. They want to just make their own living in Japan. And every year, around 10,000 Korean people start to change their nationality to Japanese one. So the younger generations have very rapid stream of changing nationality. That's why the older generation is worried about that it will just end it up with end of the ethnic community. So they're experiencing huge generational change. But still also, there are hardcore groups who are really make a strong voice against the history of issue as well. But huge spectrum.
Questions? Any questions? May I? Yeah. I'm wondering that their social status, compared with the mainstream Japanese society, how's their level of education, occupation, and income? Yes.
Good. Okay. In terms of sociological research, one of the biggest problems, if you want to see that kind of some stratification issues, big data is important. And one of the big problem of studying that kind of Japanese stratification issue is all the big data, they don't put ethnic variable.
Okay.
They don't put it in. So basically, Japanese idea, even though we call Japanese assimilation policy, it is not. Most of the scholars, Japanese specialists think Japanese policies toward the foreigners living in Japan so far was not assimilation policy, actually just ignorance of their existence.
So based on your observation, based on your personal.
So my observation is there is also big spectrum, but they are successful.
Successful.
Yeah, and is it Son Masayoshi, you know, the Yahoo?
Yahoo?
Yeah, the owner of the Yahoo and all those huge companies also exist, and but generally, and pachinko is well known is actually ethnic industry by Koreans.
Really?
Yeah.
So the founder of this program is also the owner of Jinko.
Yeah.
So
That's
he
why.
may be one of your research subjects.
yeah. What is called Maruhan is the biggest Japanese pachinko, and that group is also owned by Koreans. Yeah, and quite they make much money. But the problem is,
Separated but still successful.
Yeah, successful.
Okay.
But considering the why pachinko, because they have some discrimination in normal business track. That's why they are self-employed, and actually many pop cultural entertainers are Korean background, because it is another different route, right? Not normal line of business sectors. Yeah, but at the same time, but if we talk about the ethnic schools, apparently the graduates of ethnic schools are not well economically not successful because ethnic school is they are not. It is not easy for them to be employed in Japanese sector, but they are employed in ethnic sector, ethnic business sector. So they cannot they live as just a part of ethnic community, but they cannot be part of. Really, they cannot get any social ladder.
So like
in ladder
two
society.
separate systems.
Yeah.
Okay. That's interesting. Any questions? We still have 2 minutes to go. 2 minutes to go. So, final questions. Any questions? The last one. No. OK， 非常感谢Hyun Sun他今天谈的是在日本的